Welcome to Psychologist Talks. On today's episode, I want to talk a little bit more about the dangers of content creation and essentially by proxy, social media. If you see the topic up there, I use a little bit of a cliche term these days, but is content creation toxic to consume? And the answer is always, it kind of depends. There's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of cool things that we can engage we can learn and acquire when we engage content that is being created, when we engage content creators and follow particular content creators. But what's really important in a world of social media, in the world of content creation, is we learn about ourselves by virtue of engaging this content. That is, when we engage and we notice and we observe other people on the other end of the screen, even if we're not interacting with them, we use that as a sort of gauge for how are we similar or how are we different than this person. Essentially, this is what we do in all relationships. We learn about ourselves by virtue of relating. What's interesting about content creation is it's one-sided, and as I've already alluded to, there's a lot of projection that occurs. I call this the kind of Instagram version of reality. The dangers of social media, at least when there's a lack of sort of bi-directional exchange, is we can put a lot on the content creator or the content itself that might or might not be true. But often, this Instagram version is the best version of things. And when we see these sort of things that seem to excel, we often don't see ourselves in it. That doesn't quite mirror or mimic my abilities or my capabilities. And so it can actually harm, for some, it can harm people's sense of self. And that's what I think is the greater danger here, is that, content creation is very curated. It is very manicured. And in doing so, two issues kind of arise that I want to narrow focus on. One, inadvertently, I don't think most people do this. There's an inauthenticity to content creation, the content itself. And number two are increasing issues when it comes to the integrity behind content creation. Now, what do I mean by this? Let's start with authenticity, then we'll move to integrity. Authenticity, hopefully, I've already alluded to it. Hopefully, it's relatively intuitive. And that comes back to this idea of curated content. Well, I'll let me rewind first. There's one first. One would be people creating, the colloquial term is rage bait, right? Like people who are tapping into the zeitgeist of fear and anger and all sorts of like primal emotions, and they just try to capitalize on it by creating content that just pulls you in to be angry or afraid or whatever it might be. And to me, these folks are, they're the snake oil salesmen of the day. They capitalize on what is easy and is very sad. And oftentimes this is pretty transparent. When you talk to people, they're like, I know I'm being rage baited, but this, it's fine. That's what I want to do. Is that healthy for your psyche? I don't know. Probably not, but who am I to judge, right? I don't know you. I don't know your personal life or journey. That's why none of this constitutes medical advice, right? But be careful with that. But when I talk about authenticity, that's kind of like black and white authenticity, right? Like, they're not being authentic. They're preying upon your emotions to get likes and to, try to get revenue, et cetera, et cetera. The authenticity I'm more concerned about is the well-intentioned content creators, that there's still even risk within that. Now, what do I mean? Well, if you've watched the About This Channel episode, you know what I'm going to say, and that's that sort of curated nature of things. When I engage this particularly around like videos or podcasts, as there's a lot of editing that goes into it, and I'm very big on these singular cuts that are completely unedited, and they're ad-lib, right? I'm not reading anything. There's nothing near me. There's literally no notes regarding this. And what I'm trying to do is to just be fully human in a way that's not nice and edited. There's not this nice sounding script that can inadvertently have people project or assume like, wow, there's so many well-spoken, well-organized people out there. Wow, people string together their thoughts so well where I feel so disorganized in all of this. And it creates kind of an othering. Like there are these people out there that are better, sharper, more cleaned up than I am over here, so very messy. which is not reality. Even the best of speakers will tell you that there is a lot of anxiety and there is something very imprecise about it. And if you ever attend actual like conferences or speaking engagements outside of like the ones that are heavily rehearsed over and over again, like a Broadway play, there's lots of like hiccups and imperfections and misplaced words and misspeaking. And that's what I hope to give to people is like, if you engage, heaven forbid, in more than 2 minutes of my content, you will, you have to sit through the imperfections rather than the perfect cuts that get the quick hits of information. You will see someone who is natively human and fallible and imperfect in their delivery. And I think that authenticity is an essential piece of content creation that is missing. There seems to be slightly pull, whether it's podcasts or other, like moving more towards long form. And long form is usually long form because you can't script it as well. And it's usually singular cuts or maybe just a couple cuts. And that increases authenticity significantly. So I'm super happy to see a little bit more of that. But by golly, we need so much more of it rather than these quick hits, which, probably dovetails on another issue. It's not just about inauthenticity, inadvertent inauthenticity. It's also about consumer practices. Are people willing to sit a little bit longer, to meander a little bit longer, such as this? I know I'm sitting here in my head. I know I've kind of repeated the same point a couple times. Isn't that annoying? No, it's human. It's human. It's authentic. Could I rehearse these more? Sure. Do I reshoot sometimes because I'm so disorganized? Yeah. Because, I'm just not planful around this stuff. I get an idea. I sit with it. I mull it over. These are probably the central points. Shoot an episode. It's either first take or maybe worst case third take if it's like, oh crap, people aren't going to be able to follow this at all. But that is the point. Like, you're engaging in this content, at least with my content, not just to learn something, but to learn something from a human who's being authentic with you and not just like disseminating this perfect nugget, this illusion of perfection, these illusions of how simple things are. It's not. Life and mental health and well-being is not simple, and it is not clean. Very rarely is it simple and clean. Sometimes it can be, but more often than not, the devil is in the details, and the cure, the quote unquote cure, the process of healing lives in something that is messy and imprecise. And I think that is a vital element of what can help, content creation and social media be a little bit less quote unquote, favorite word of the day, right? Toxic. That moves us to integrity. Now, integrity is a little bit of a newer one. Ish. Because it's an element of like, who am I listening to and why am I listening? Now, there's a lot of armchair experts out there, and it's not inherently the worst thing in the world. I think it's a beautiful thing to share opinions, even if you're not super informed. We have to do this in day-to-day life anyway. We can't be an expert in everything, and yet we have to insert ourselves and make decisions about things that we're not 100% aware of. And so it's nice to have, whether it's armchair experts or straight up experts, to turn to and be like, I'm going to use this to inform my decisions and make the best decision I can in this imperfect, authentically imprecise world. Indeed. However, not only do we have armchair experts that speak with great authority when they should not, and there has been a delegitimization of expertise, which is incredibly dangerous. I have an episode on that as well. I'll try to link that below. If you are listening to the YouTube version of this or watching the YouTube version of this, I'll link that below. But there's also AI. So AI is a beautiful thing and a terrifying thing. Now, remember, AI is very narrow right now. It's a data processor. And I've got episodes even on me kind of testing it as a psychologist. Go, let's see how it does. And as much as I hate it as a therapist, I really don't like it. I've got an episode on that. Its ability to collate data and just give like conceptual, basic information is impressive. It just supersedes. There's no way as a human I can compete with that. It's just absolutely impressive. The danger is, how do people wield it? In the world of content creation, this can create essentially faux expertise. It's not the end of the world, right? That if someone has content that is essentially a regurgitation of AI. But I think what people really need and are going to benefit from, particularly in the world of AI, is how lived experience or expertise and or expertise integrate with that which can be found on AI. And that's where I hope I and fellow providers can actually, fill a little bit of a void here. Because, I think the worst case scenario, if we're being, legitimate professionals, is we're not like just conjuring stuff from AI and regurgitating it. The worst case scenario, we're augmenting, or we just don't use it at all. You can hear from us without a lick of looking up AI. It's just our work that we've done as providers, or research that we've done, or research that we've consumed independent of what AI has fetched for us. As an example, I did not really get into AI until recently. And so I think maybe 7 to 10 episodes I've used that as a resource to find particular articles, or like, I swear I've heard research, but I can't find it. Can you fetch that for me? But so far, here in January 2026, it is a minority of what I have used. And so I hope there's this integrity behind what I'm offering. It is a mixture of research sometimes augmented by AI. I know I'll use it a little bit in the future. Maybe I should put a note somewhere to help. I don't know. Of like, hey, this one's a little bit more AI informed. I'll have to, sort through that. But it's a mixture of expertise with, at most, some augmentation, and therefore there's an integrity to what I'm offering you. There is a context within which all information is delivered. There is experience and exposure that this information is delivered in. Something that AI cannot do for itself. It only collates what is written, what is known and exists on the internet. It cannot, not yet at least, conjure up, accumulated experience. And therefore, I hope there is greater integrity. Now, not everybody needs to be an expert, as I already alluded to or mentioned. I mean, some people can be armchair experts. They're probably going to have to augment their information. If not, AI is going to play a larger role. And my hope is that the way to engage that with integrity is say, like, hey, this is my speculation. This is based on, my lived experience. These are my just simply opinions. And, if this opinion jives with you, that's cool. But I'm not going to state it as this sort of known truth, the kind of ego-driven behavior of like, I know this because I'm smart and you're going to like me and you're going to subscribe, even if that's unconscious. The integrity way of saying it is like, I looked a lot of this up, and this is my experience as a consumer. This is my experience as, fill in the blank gender or race or socioeconomic status or country of origin, whatever it is, right? Like, here's my input. But that doesn't overlap with like, you should listen to me over an expert. Excuse me, something in my eye. So that's the integrity piece. And that's essentially my beef. I think the greatest danger right now to content creation is people, there's an increasing uncertainty of what authentic self-presentation looks like at a human level. And number two, there's an increasing going to be confusion of like what truly is natively known and experienced and worked through by someone versus a quick fix, quick insertion of AI. And on the receiving end, on the viewing end of that, I think it's going to make things pretty messy unless content creators and we become more diligent on social media in general of being a more authentic, just plain unedited human, and then being transparent with that which we're actually, like, where are we drawing this information from? Otherwise, the central premise, when we are inauthentic and curate, and then everything feels natively known, the experience of the user, I think, can be, I know nothing. I am invisible in a world that is already increasingly easy to feel invisible in. And maybe I'm making too big of a stink. Like I talked to my wife, who's a psychologist, about it. She's like, I don't think people do that. I'm like, oh, I don't know how many people, project that out. I would bargain at least 50% of people. I think there's a reason why there's tons of anxiety and depression that exists in the world right now. It's because there's just these like caricatures of existence and how people present. And I think it's just, unconsciously at least, and gradually gnawing away at people's psyches and sense of themselves and what the world truly is. That's just my belief. I have no evidence of it whatsoever. It's just, my understanding of how frequently people project onto things when they're ill-defined. So for whatever that's worth, you're welcome to comment, be like, I think that none of this happens and you're full of it. It's just, curious what people think. So I've yammered on long enough. Again, ad libbing, right? Authenticity, 15 minutes of authenticity, unplanned authenticity. As always, I hope it's at least thought provoking. Again, I love engaging in the comments, and I know not a lot of my viewers really leave much in the comments, but always happy to dialogue if folks have anything they'd want to add to this mix, or your experience as a fellow content creator, your experience as a consumer of content, whatever it might be. But as always, stay curious.